Okay. So, hi, Joel.
Hi, Marie. Good to see you.
Here we are. It's
Here we
so
are.
great to see you.
You too.
Like for real.
Mhm.
Oh, I knew that was gonna happen.
Hi,
Joel.
Hi, Marie. Good to see you.
Here we
Good to see
are.
you.
It's
Here we
so great to
Here
see
we
you.
are. You too. You too.
Like for real.
Mhm.
Oh, I knew that was gonna happen. I knew that was gonna happen. The power of the mind. So anyway, as I was saying, I'm really delighted to be with you today. It's such a miracle, in fact, because I was in Facebook. I think we started talking on Monday, and you had done this mini live, and I was just like, Joel, it was like this resonance in my field. Like your energy was so beautiful and so authentic and so humble and honest. And I know that we've spoken in the past, and you were so supportive to me back in the day when I was going through all of the things. My first time going deep down the rabbit hole, getting engaged in all sorts of conversations online, some of them with incredible feedback and a lot of love, and others that created a lot of turmoil in my world. And in the last 5 years, I mean, because it's been, wow, now 5 years since 2020, I've really been sitting in the quiet spaces and really kind of withdrawn from the online world. But your live was like this like bell that was like ringing. It was like ding 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 ding. Oh yeah, there's still really amazing humans out there that are sharing from their heart because they love humanity, because they love themselves, because they love their families and their communities, and they're really wanting to make a shift in their world. And realizing also at the same time that we want to make those shifts, there's resistance.
Mhm.
There's this like whole big pile of it. And I would say there's like a Marie pre-2020 and a Marie after. And pre-2020, I was the kind of woman who was like, it's all good. Only love is real. Just keep going. Just keep going. Like that movie, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Like nothing could get to me. And I obviously had lots of opportunities to get upset, but I just kept blasting through and blasting through and blasting through. Now, on one hand, we could say, well, good job, Marie. But what I found is that I was spiritually bypassing
Yeah.
so much of my personalized curriculum, so
Mm.
much of the good stuff, because I think the undercurrent of all of it is I was afraid.
Mm.
I was afraid, and I didn't believe that truly only love was real because I was avoiding the dark, the shadow. And so setting it all down and giving myself space and permission to actually go into the fear instead
Mm.
of ignoring it
Mm.
has been massive and been healing. And your message, like I said the other day, was really kind of like a window of opportunity to say, you know what? How do we marry these two energies? Because undoubtedly we have them.
Mhm.
And, the method of ignoring it and bypassing it can only take you so far before you get slammed right on your face. And it wasn't necessarily, a punishment, but rather a grander opportunity to understand spirituality, the world we live in, and all of that grand stuff. So I'm going to give you the talking stick. That was kind of my intro. Guys, if you're new to Joel, Joel is a master. I don't know if I'm just going to go for it. You're shamanic wisdom in the Toltec tradition, um, your work in moving from resistance to resilience, your coaching, the things that you do online are really beautiful, and your message is just so dear to my heart. So I'm really grateful to have you here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Marie. I'm so glad you invited me to this talk. And yeah, I'm glad you checked in on what I was sharing. It's been really challenging times for me in different ways. So yeah, I'm just trying to be really real with everything I'm feeling. And yeah, I trained in this really powerful system that actually kind of uses fear as a means to get to know where you're at. So the Castaneda material is very confronting. His teacher taught him in ways that would be considered extreme and overwhelming, but I've learned to adapt and understand what was done in that apprenticeship, and I just share a lot of this knowledge with people in my courses and stuff about the four enemies of man: fear, clarity, power, and old age. And they're all like traps. Like you get past fear, you get clarity, and now you're a philosopher and you think you understand the world, and it's just another trap. And until you really learn to become powerful and speak truth to your, to power and to yourself, do you end up moving beyond clarity into being able to actualize your power in this realm. And it's very de-armoring in a variety of ways. And so I'm experiencing a lot of de-armoring and heart openings through my own training with my teachers. Unfortunately, a lot of my teachers ended up becoming spun out in their own power. And so it's really hard to observe the different stages that everyone goes through. But as I've learned to let go of most people's projections onto me, I've just been more and more discovering my own personal path and becoming more passionate about my existence and really falling in love with my existence. And I've learned to really honor that inner voice instead of letting outer voices, condition me. But I still have a ton of work to do. I'm really a novice compared to what I have learned about from the Toltec tradition. Um, but the Toltec path had a dark history where they had to revitalize or reinvent their system because they got caught up in misuse of power. And then they realized they were going to get really lost. And so the Castaneda material, I highly recommend people read it, or the Taisha Abelard or Flinda Donner Grau books, because they explain the reality of our situation is that we are being influenced by forces that we cannot see that have lent us their mind. And so the hive mind is not an easy thing to come to terms with. It's like a radio channel that we can't turn off. And so speaking of resistance, it's not actually ours. It's a program that's in place to make sure that we don't actually step into our power with an open heart. And the more advanced you get, the more clever that program gets.
Totally.
Might think you're being left alone at a certain stage. I see people saying online that I've conquered my mind, I'm no longer accessible, and it's total bullshit. They're totally lying to themselves. You will never be free of the programming, but you learn to come to terms with the fact that that programming is constant, and then you don't ever get spun out in this misunderstanding. So the reason most people don't read the material is because it's so confronting. But we're in a time now, as the veil is lifting more and more, that it's going to become pretty critical to be realistic about how energetically challenging it is to be aware in this world. But it's such a beautiful experience to be able to be honest with oneself. So yeah, just working on deep marine.
Totally. Well, there's a few directions we can go. I would like you to talk a little bit about the Toltec wisdom as it relates to the four agreements,
Sure.
because those are kind of like most people these days have come across that material. It's kind of like beginner level, although it's really potent information, like don't take things personally, kind of speaks to what you're saying. Like we have this program. So
Yeah.
why judge ourselves for it? Let's just learn how to practice more observation, you know, allow it to, can we coexist with this mindset rather than feeling like we've got to smash it down or disarm it or whatever? It's like, how do we not take things personally when we're feeling in self-judgment or we're judging others? My whole thing is all about forgiveness, and forgiveness really being this practice of willingness to see things differently, more than like, it's like what you're saying in the material that kind of got a little bit twisted and some of the leaders got spun out. It's like with anything true and pure. It's like our humanity or our programming, these things, it's like religion. We take it and then we just distort it and turn it upside down. And then everybody's like, no, 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 don't go there. But it's like, if we can get through that initial phase, then there's so much good stuff in there. It's like, can we distill it down? Can we kind of remove some of the cobwebs around it and the people that share it to see if there's still some goodness for us to apply?
Mm.
So,
Well said. Yeah, yeah. So not taking things personally, you stop being offended at the world. Toltecs say that we spend our lives being offended at one thing or another. and then most of our energy goes toward that. And it might be, whatever storylines you're paying attention to, you might be at odds with them. Um, and so we end up at war in a sense or in a battle, and there's spiritual warfare is very real. And learning to really become your own person means that you're no longer letting people's projections or storylines or dramas, interfere with your process. So, what Don Miguel Ruiz offered people is some baby steps toward the Castaneda material, and it's very, very effective and needed. And he's become a very beautiful being in the process of his path. And they talk about impeccability. And the
Hmm.
difference between discipline and impeccability is that you do things out of love rather than out of fear. Often people are very disciplined because they don't want to deal with the stuff that can come up if they're not disciplined.
Right.
And then it isn't authentic, it's just more like avoiding the shadow. And so at some point, yeah, and me too, we all do it. And it's just a matter of coming out of the shame and guilt for that. So I help people to come out of the shame and guilt first, or the bitterness or the resentfulness that they haven't really been honest with. And I still have my bitter parts and my resentful pieces from being in cults and not able to fully come to terms with what I allowed, but I'm doing my best to take responsibility for it. But Toltecs say that we have no business following the ups and downs of humanity. It's like there's an inner journey that one can take regardless of what's going on in the outer world,
Hmm.
in the exterior.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's a very beautiful deep dive into silence. And I know you've experienced a lot of silence in your path, and there's deeper and deeper levels. It's actually infinite. And on the other side of meditation is lucidity and dream traveling. And there are other worlds to go into and witness through your mind's eye. And in fact, you can stay there for long periods of time and you can have conversations with people and access telepathy and remote viewing and really get good at that. But some people do it for power or to, feel that they're above others. And so being able to suspend judgment of self and others, even for just a few seconds, those few seconds will grow into minutes, and those minutes will grow into this unique state of awareness called indifference. And it's not a cold indifference, it's just the ability to see things at face value without explaining them.
Hmm.
So the movements I teach is a language. It's not, it gets us out of the mind. And so there's ways to decode or recode your system. And the Toltecs found such powerful ways to do this. So what Don Miguel Ruiz is offering is really profound. Um, but when you stop taking things personal, then you're observing the richness or the trauma of each person. Even if someone's attacking you,
Hmm.
you really are able to understand where they're coming from,
Hmm.
and you're not offended that they're attacking you. And like
Hmm.
Aikido is really helpful for this, being able to understand that you can neutralize the situation without hurting them or yourself when you
Hmm.
move into that pure heart-based self-defense. And that Aikido shows up in at the grocery store if somebody's, yelling at you, or if something happens at a concert or on the like road rage and stuff. So there's practical applications that we can go out in the world and get to know where we're at. So Toltecs even suggest that once you found your center, you go and work for a boss who has like the biggest ego you can find, somebody that will literally try and take your center so that you get to know if you're really capable of not being offended and not taking things personal. And it's
Hmm.
no joke. Like it's most
Oh, yeah.
people will avoid this, but it's going to come to you somehow, some way if you don't go looking for this. So Toltecs say that the tyrants and all these ego monsters are necessary. Their contract is pure and they're here to teach us. So rather than this idea that we're going to change the world and everything is going to be utopian is an illusion. It's based on a fantasy. In reality, the tyrants serve a very key purpose for us to understand what can happen And we can move into such compassion for the wound that creates that ego that we become like anthropologists. We
Mhm.
start to study humanity
Right.
without having to get a degree in it. You know, it's a lot of the indoctrination through the college and stuff makes it impossible for people, you know, to truly understand and find purpose and a path of heart. And so the Costanian material is based on finding a path of heart. And when you're in your purpose, then there's a ton of energy that is supporting you, and
Mhm.
you don't have to drag yourself through life. But it can take time to find that path of heart when to be really honest with oneself as to, you know, what you're here, what you're being asked to do. So I speak of rather than manifesting, listening,
Mhm.
because often people are trying to create us what they think they want. And I say,
Right.
be careful what you want. Be careful what you ask for because you're going to get it.
Hmm.
But if you're listening, then you'll be receiving, you'll become a perceiver of energy, you'll understand, you don't push past the resistance, you sit with it, or even go into the pain before intentionally, like walk toward the monsters rather than wait for them to overwhelm you. You
Right.
become aware that your ancestors passed on all this stuff. And you're not going to be able to just get through it in a couple years. It's going to take a lifetime of becoming an alchemist and being able to really purify and make peace with everything that got passed on to you. So it's tricky business, but it's amazing work.
It is tricky business, but we've been left with so many tools. For me, it's the yoga practices. If we just distill down, what I'd like to present here for the people that are watching is that, universal principles are true in so many different ways. So if we look at it from the yogic perspective, even just the first three sutras, the first one says, now is the time for yoga. And
Mm,
yoga then is defined in the second one, which is yoga is stopping the way the mind turns.
hmm
It's being able to kind of like, okay, like, wow, things are going a little wacky, but I have this capacity to change in the now, in the present moment. Because most of us, again, are either in the past or in the future, and rarely are we existing with the now. I mean, that in and of itself is a lifetime practice. So anytime we can remind ourselves that now is the time to stop the way the mind is turning. Then the third one says, then I can reside in my own nature.
mm,
He or she can abide in the self, the
hmm
higher self, the S, capital S self. And then when we do that, we can see like, it's like what you're just speaking to. We can go into the pain. We can go right up to the monsters because we know that we're strong
Yeah.
and that we're built to last. Do you
Mm,
know? Like we've been here forever and we'll be here. But the part of us that I really have been learning and I'm practicing so like fervently to really identify myself as is the one who
mm,
can move through it rather than the one who is moving through it.
mm.
Do you
Beautiful.
know, like even though, yeah, they're my human is like, am I still in a body? Yeah, so I'm here. Like I still have things to learn, but there's this other aspect of observation that you're speaking to that really resonates with me because what happens, I think, for so many of us is that when we're taking things personally or when we're in judgment and when we're up against, our inner critics, it's very difficult to, do your best in that situation. You just kind of want to, at least for me, I don't want to say you, but I want to just like throw the towel in.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, well, what's the point even? Because these guys are just so strong. These inner stories, all of this baggage carried on from my ancestral lineage, like who am I? How can I do it? And then it brings me to the Course of Miracles, which I love so much. And one of the teachings in there is that, whenever I'm in fear, I can be sure that I'm trusting my own strength
hmm
rather than the strength of the divine within me.
Wow. Beautiful.
And that's really powerful, isn't it? Because there's nothing to fear.
Mm,
If and the vision, the idea of Christ and Christ consciousness is all about that. Like,
mm,
I'm one. I'm the
mm,
son of God, and so are you. It's all good. Sure, you want to nail me to the cross? I mean, who knows? Was it real? Who knows? But the concepts and the metaphysical conversation around these stories that we've grown up with are so encouraging and so healing. And so when there is resistance, it's again just knowing that you are powerful. And I think that's what we start to practice rather than the power of like, look at all the things I've done. Look
Right.
at me. I can do handstands, or I did all the yoga, and all the people online saying that it's complete. It's not. As long as we're in the body,
Yeah.
we're here to learn, and life is a school.
Mm.
Like that's it. One last thing before I give you the talking stick that I really love also from the Course of Miracles is that we don't necessarily get to choose, I'm paraphrasing, the curriculum. We can
Yeah.
only choose when we engage.
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
so we can link that back to yoga also, and yoga philosophy is saying, well, why not now?
Mm. Love it. Thank
You
you.
know,
Wow.
so
Yeah,
good.
yeah, the perceptual power that we have, our perspective shift is what creates the capacity to truly make magical changes in our life. And so the oneness, being able to like observe the ocean and get so silent that you actually become the ocean in that moment. You experience the totality of oneness through perceptual intensity. So time is measured by intensity. So my life is really long. My days are really long. Other
Right.
people are like, life's going so quickly. Why is it going so fast? I'm like, or I met people at the high school reunion and they're saying the same things 25 years later or whatever. It's like, oh my God, it's so painful to but it's so helpful to see and understand, so we really do have the capacity to merge. What you perceive, eventually you become.
Mhm.
And so when you flood your eyes with beauty and you fall in love with how magical this earth is and how much she has to show us, and you follow those threads and you allow yourself to really be healed by her. Like I had to give her my pain when my
Right.
girlfriend died at a
Right.
young age. We were really close, and I was able to then meet the earth through that pain. If it wasn't for that pain, I wouldn't have ever met the earth to that degree.
Mhm.
And then she became a helper. We're not separate. It's not like
Mhm.
these, it,
Right.
it continues, it goes on, and just in a different way.
Mhm.
And so it's just a matter of being able to keep keep adjusting your perception, be open to different feelings that will come in. Most people repeat the same feelings throughout their life, but there's a whole new realm of feeling to tap into. And Juan Matus in the Castaneda material, he said, this world is just a feeling. We perceive it as a physical world, but that's just because we're under the influence of forces that have created a limitation. There's something higher on the food chain that is the puppeteers of this realm.
Mhm.
And when you are able to come to terms with how disturbing that is, it
Right.
doesn't mean that you have to get uh, sick or overwhelmed by it. You can slowly introduce yourself to these concepts. And once you realize what's actually going on, then it makes sense why the world is the way it is.
Right.
You don't spend all this time going, oh, why does it have to be like this? Can't
Right.
it be different? You end up making every day count, every moment count. And that ability to go into silence and to be able to feel new feelings. And this is why Toltecs recapitulate, is it's not like they dwell on the past, but they go in strategically into their memories and recollect their soul essence with a very magical act of breath work that includes like scanning the memory, and you become very capable of focusing if you're able to do this. And then you
Mhm.
reclaim your attention. Otherwise, your attention will always be on, kind of the limitation of this one layer of the onion that we're in.
Right.
But we're meant to be dream travelers. We're meant to explore and discover new territory. We're adventurers. We're meant to go into the unknown and to make it the known.
Mm.
There's plenty of material to explore there. So our capacity just to become focused, like my
Mhm.
elder would say, rather than meditate, focus. Learn to
Mhm.
be so focused that you're following threads. To completely go blank is possible, I'm sure, but I think a lot of people struggle with just being able to turn off the mind. So I teach the movements, you teach the yoga. They come from totally two different systems, but they are so powerful in that they allow you to get out of the mind and into the body. And if we could be more embodied, then we could get more grounded. If we get more grounded, we could be like a tree. Our roots could go really deep into the mother, and then our branches could get really wide and tall and expansive, and we'd start to explore more perceptual territory. And so the shamanic movements break up crusted energy that's on the toroidal field. And then that's what makes us get old and crusty, is that that crust is building up over time. And you see it in certain people that they've never dealt with that crust, and it's just closing in on them. And so it's not that difficult to do yoga or the movements, but the resistance that shows up is that predator mind making sure that you remain food for it.
Mm.
And so that's where you free yourself from kind of the way the rest of humanity is going, is that you honor the resistance, but then when you get that opening, you take it. And so
Hmm.
invitations every day to do something different and new and break pattern and start to step into other feelings than the feelings you've experienced in the past. I broke pattern at a really young age, hitchhiking. I lived in the Rocky Mountains for a period of time with a backpack, like doing things that are outside of the norm is the universe does support that as long as you're listening. But if it's like if you're doing it as a means to prove something,
Hmm.
then it's just another ego dance.
Totally. I'm really into this idea of listening, and it reminds me that, you've spoken to Jason Breshears online
Yep.
a few times, and I just find his work like, wow, so timely. I mean, so rich. It just seems to cover every single question I've ever had. It's just like
Yeah.
amazing, amazing work. But one of the things that he says often is that there is a benevolent force,
Hmm.
like that we can see that. And so when we're in the resistance of our own experience, then it's that moment of like remembering there is light, you know, there is only love. There is a realm where that is true, and I can go there given whatever it is, do the movements, pull my navel in. I mean, when you were speaking, it reminded me of, I don't know if I want to share this online, but here we are, a plant medicine journey.
Sure.
And
Mhm.
I've had a number of them, but this one in specific that came to me was so powerful because it was like all of the layers of everything just were gone, and there was only love. Like
Mhm.
there really was.
Mhm.
And I don't know how long it lasted.
Yeah.
Like in a different journey, I was the air. Like
Mhm.
I was like, oh my, there was no me anymore with all of my issues and all of my stuff. It was like I got absorbed into that. And the yogis call that samadhi, when we're absorbed into the universal consciousness. And so having had that experience, it was interesting because it was like, all the typical like geometries, the light, the energy, the activation of just feeling like there was nothing that could ever and even existed that was outside where I was. Like
Wow.
it wasn't even real. It was
Mhm.
just so magical. And then the woman who went after me had the opposite experience.
Yeah.
And I've had hard ones too. So it's not to say that this was just the one of the ones where I felt truly blessed that
Mhm.
I felt absorbed into that divine energy, but I was still coming out of my experience. And so as I was observing her, there was this part of me that was like fascinated with it. Like I was kind of confused. I was like, why is she so sad?
Yeah.
There's only love. Like, isn't that
Mhm.
the best news in the whole world? Like, what
Mhm.
is there to worry about? And granted, her mother had passed recently, and there was just her marriage was on the rocks. I mean, my God, we all
Yeah.
have these life experiences because we are here having that. It's like I'll ask you, like, do you believe that we signed up for this? Like, did we agree to the traumas that we experienced
Mhm.
from a place of knowing that actually I'm in that field where there is only love and it's all good permanently and nothing else even exists. But yeah, why not? I'll go down to planet Earth and just like try on some crazy personalities and meet some nutcases and, try and remember and forgive and forgive and forgive and more
Yeah.
downward dogs and dances and whatever we can do. But because we knew we would come out of it,
Hmm.
I don't know.
That's
I go
a
into
great
that
question.
sometimes. I'm like, because when I actually found myself really from that experience, so like for a long while there, just like nothing could touch me. I was like, woo, I'm like, it's all good forever.
Yeah.
But at some point, there was something that occurred in the external stimuli that kind of snapped me out of it.
Yeah.
And then what happened was it was like a deep depression.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, it's like it's not real, or it
Mm.
is, but I can't access it. And yes, pain is real, and yes, I have to suffer. And the Buddha was right, life was suffering. And it's like this like spin out. And then yeah, but the answer to suffering is enlightenment. Fill your mind up with light. But I'm like, I can't. There's so much poison in my brain from all the antibiotics when I was little. It's like, oh, I need to detox more. And then, oh, I need to do this, or I should just be eating fruit. I'm never eating food again. And then it's just like these extreme responses
Yeah.
to the contrast of
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree. We signed up for this not just because it's an obstacle course in which we can gain skills, but this place is a launching pad. So the Earth Mother will give you a boost into other worlds that you wouldn't be able to get to if you didn't come here.
Nice.
So through the art of sun gazing, there's a breakthrough that happens for certain people where you learn to get so silent, and then the sun will it'll light you up so completely that you glide into other layers of the onion. And in those other layers of the onion, you're able to understand our purpose, our true power. It's called shattering the mirror of self-reflection, where you're no longer me. There's no more me, me, me. You're in such observation that there is no way to, be focused on self. And so self-importance is the enemy that Toltec's referred to, and there's a way to unbind from it. But it is very, very delicate. And you could end up in a mental ward if you were to open your perception too intensely, too quickly. So
Totally.
going into these other worlds is no joke. Um, I'm just learning to step in and out very carefully. And it's taken a lot of training in order to even be able to do that. But then I find myself experiencing a new level of challenge because the program is almost like an ancient AI that it just keeps adjusting and introducing another program once you reach a certain stage. And it's much more, it's it all seems like a really powerful contradiction because you do end up dealing with deeper layers of challenging energies that approach you. And so, you find yourself having to become very humble in order to make peace with your wounding. So warriors all have wounds, and they're not meant to go away because they're going to balance your being when you do really have a greater capacity to travel into these other layers and assist people in doing so, right? Everything turns into a cult
Right.
because that program gets a hold of those people and turns them into cult leaders gladly. It's like, perfect. Thank you. You think you're enlightened? You're the perfect person. Now I can use you. Now I can
Mhm.
control hundreds of people through you. Now I can get all these people to hand their power over to you. So I'm very careful to not let anyone put me on a pedestal because then I would be ungrounded and it would be a disservice to them.
Mhm.
And vice versa. I put people on a pedestal and I saw how that hurt me and how it hurt them.
Mhm.
And so just being realistic about the delicacy of this.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, people that have really difficult trips on psychedelics, it's because, there's undealt with aspects of their past. And that's why the recapitulation is really effective. Some people say, don't go into the past, don't think of the future. I think there's a way to go into the past and the future so that you become nonlinear. And that leads to the eternal now. Is
Mm,
that you have deja vu, you're seeing a vision of your future self is informing you. Toltec say we're inside of a memory. Everything's already happened, but it needs to be spread out in a linear way for us to totally experience it.
mhm.
And then we don't even have to stay within the limitations of that memory. We can actually go into other worlds. Like in the movie Inception, you can go into deeper and deeper layers of dreams. And there are dreams that are so profound that spending 10 seconds of this time is equivalent to 10 years.
Yeah.
So we can expand so much more than we were conditioned through religion. And all religions are programs. Even spirituality is a program because so Toltecs aren't spiritual, they're practical and energetic.
Hmm.
And they sound very mystical and strange, but they're trying to speak to a part of your being that isn't on board yet, as a means
Right.
to plant seeds to activate that consciousness.
I really can appreciate that, having kind of done so much to break down my patterning and yoga being that entryway when I was 24 of being like, oh my gosh, like none of this is real. Like my thoughts are make believe.
Mm,
Like all of these thoughts of self-judgment or projection onto other people, like I could really not be that. I could
yeah,
really just see that that was happening, but I didn't necessarily have to go into that because, the fourth sutra, so after those first three, now stopping, see, the fourth one is like, because otherwise you become your thoughts.
yeah,
And the yogis are speaking also to that part of you that hasn't plugged into any of these, or if you are, you've decided you're willing to start pulling that plug out and to start to live a little bit more into that space of uncertainty and
mhm,
being open to the possibilities and the potentials that are beyond the ones that you can see right in here. Like maybe there's a whole other thing. Like if I think about the trajectory of my life, had I not come to yoga or had I not had that injury that took me to yoga, it's like then actually become grateful for all the hard things.
yeah,
And when we're in that spirit of gratitude, that energy, it allows us to be more in a space of equanimity with
mm,
others too. It's like what you're saying about, cults and like having followers and like really kind of bringing people. It's interesting for people like us because to a certain extent, we're here online,
yeah,
having serious discussions, saying, "Hey, if what I'm saying is interesting to you and you want to go a little bit deeper, let's talk." And that's actually a good thing, but I've really come to see that in my past pre-2020, there was a lot of come over here because I have things figured out and you don't.
sure.
And that was a hard truth to accept about myself and my work and to to shift myself to kind of like shake out that conditioning so that I could actually get back to what the essence of what I was trying to teach was that there are no special relationships. Like we're all in this thing together. And some of us, are talking about it in this way, and some of us aren't even talking about it because we're just still plugged in.
Hmm.
No can do, don't want to, it's fine. And then we can just accept that that's a part of it, like that person, that's their cycle. And always holding a potential if that's what they desire. It's
Yeah.
not that I desire to go out there and save everybody because I found the answer. So
Mhm.
it gets really interesting. I think the more that we dig into these very, simple spiritual lessons. Like I love that from A Course in Miracles, like this idea of being created. Like we were created, we didn't create ourselves.
Mhm.
And there's nobody else that's better and there's nobody else that's worse.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, yeah. Toltecs say that a king or a beggar have an equal chance of entering eternity with their awareness intact. And, everyone's conditioning is unique to them. And in fact, a beggar probably is more likely to, be able to navigate that intensity because the king has identified with being above.
Mm.
But even a beggar given a chance to find someone below them, they will criticize them because then they find, so like we are very complicated creatures that have been,
True.
so how can we become simple and therefore see everyone as balls of light inside of a world of magic and just witness them in their struggles and in their intensity. So everyone's a messenger, every action, every word spoken, the world is connected, it's not separate. And being able to move into that connectedness and listen and who to talk to and when to step in. And a lot of spiritual people are like, oh, I don't have no conflict. But there's a way to be part of this world and to stand up for people in situations where it's needed and to use your voice.
Mhm.
Uh, I'll be in a group of people and I'll be shown that I need to speak, like something's coming out of me. And then if I don't say it, it's like everything goes quiet and the conversation stops because I didn't step into my I didn't do this is like theater and I like forgot my lines or something and then the whole thing shuts down. So there's becoming bold and being able to speak truth to power, becoming fearless enough to say what you really mean without trying to sugarcoat it or to make it sound appropriate to the person you're talking to. We become more organic and independent, and we start to come out of the heavy syntax or the storylines that are keeping people caught in that theater. So
Mhm.
we're all actors on a stage, and Toltecs try to break out of their character. They'll go to like New York City and go into a bar and pretend they're somebody totally different and dress in totally different clothes than they're comfortable in. But eventually they be comfortable in that. So actors are very liberated people. Some of them are MK Ultra'd in order to do that acting, and so it's a little bit skewed. But the natural actors that are really gifted at being able to move from character to character and truly drop in, they get to take a break from themselves.
Mhm.
What an incredible experience to be able to not be your conditioned being. And then that's where the perception starts to move. You could get lost in that. You see that with like Joaquin Phoenix. He like got lost in his characters and it started to really affect him. So these people that are trained in these arts, they have a unique capacity to do something very powerful. But unfortunately, they've let the pedestals and the attention and the materialism, for the most part, they became identified with that. So even though they're getting these incredible moments of freedom in their acting, then they return to that self-importance eventually. And so Toltecs seek to become so liberated that their life becomes magical in every moment. So I've
Mhm.
learned to live in heightened awareness to where it's like I'm on mushrooms all the time. It's hard to relate to people who are complaining or who are, paying attention to things that are extracting their energy. But that's how I learn even more is being
Mhm.
able to be in the presence of them, redirect the conversation and give them an opportunity to, move their perception a little bit. And then
Mhm.
they're offering me a direct feedback as to like family members who, can only see me the way that they saw me when they had power over me. It's like really fascinating to see how the ego projects onto people that are the closest to you. It's
Mhm.
heartbreaking. Part of the de-armoring is to let our hearts get broken a little bit, and then we let the luminosity come in and heal those wounds. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to relate. So there is no way to be born and protected without going through trauma in order to become evolved because wisdom comes painfully and in driblets. So if you want to become a wise person, you're going to go through it. And so being thankful for this obstacle course because it serves perfectly as a means to know oneself.
Mhm. And I think that's something that I also love about your message and what you're sharing with others is that like there is this place in you where it's pure. Like even though we might be playing out some weird scenario and it might hurt me because I'm sentient and I have feelings, PS, like there is that. And someone in my life, there's what a handful of people still that can really say something that will, kind of like that, a little ruffle my feathers. but at the end of the day, it's like, thank you, like, thank you for showing me that I'm still here and that I still have work to do. And then kind of taking those experiences as like rites of passage to be able to support others in moving through their hard things in in their ability to let go of the shame or the blame or the guilt or whatever lower frequency that they've found themselves all netted up in. Like, how do we unwind ourselves from that? I just know for myself when I get, and it's interesting because I used to really, this is why I didn't like shadow work and why I just didn't do it. Because like it was just too hard because when I would get to those really sad, depressed states, it would almost feed that system even deeper. Like I couldn't find my way out of that. Like there was resistance to the heart practices. There was a resistance to being in the light again. I'm not worthy. All of these old programs, it was like I would get to these places and think, well, I thought I did this work. Like what in the hell is happening? Like she just said one thing. Like why am I spun all the way out to God knows where? And she's allowed to have her opinions. Like I know that. Like I know I don't need to take this personally. Like we know all of these things intellectually, but the emotional impact of some of these interactions I find more recently, and maybe it's because I'm being challenged at a deeper level, but it's almost like they happen and it was like it took the breath right out before I even had a moment to process it. And then I was so spun that I couldn't seem to forgive myself enough or let go of the shame to actually come back into the truth of who I was, to see that actually like this can this can hurt me on a human level, like this can hurt my feelings and all of those things, but that aspect of me that is in the hand of God, an idea in the mind of God is not affected by this, is simply observing this as nothing. Like, but I'm the one that's like using my mental energy and my physical energy to grab it and to prove to myself I am not that. I'm not that good. God
Mm.
isn't good. There is no benevolence. It's all gone to hell. Look at all the kids that are suffering. Why are we killing everybody? Like, why doesn't everybody have food? What's happening? It's like so it can go so murky and murky and murky in there. So let's talk about in our last little bit of time, like how do we stop? It's like, and then the people in my life that like know me and know this lingo will feed me back my own teachings, and I want to karate chop their heads off. And I'm not proud of it, but it's true. It's like, oh, well, just, miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. Or, they'll say, just change the way your mind is turning, or take a deep breath. And I'm like, I'm not going to breathe, you know, like I've like become that person that is in resistance. Like I just plug right into that programming. And,
Mm.
it's interesting because it's wavy over there. It's like, and I find myself wanting to be like in the state of allowance, like in the state of love, like I had in that plant medicine trip where it was like, I just knew it to be so real. And I find that it's like spirit trusted me enough to know that like I could have that experience and come back and still figure life out. But the the sadness sometimes maybe is just my judgment of the journey. Like, is it even bad that you're sad about this or that you're crying? Like maybe it's not even that bad. Maybe it's just what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. Yeah, I mean, Toltec say sadness is the most prevalent force in the universe. And so it's not meant to be avoided. We're meant to have great longing. And so being able to feel all of it and being honest with oneself. We're not meant to lose our shields all at once. So
Mm,
I mean, we do on power plant experiences, but there's a way to get to those experiences without the power plant. But then you've really done the work if you can get there without the medicine, right? And so you're going to be given those glimpses through whatever means, but then you're come back in to get to know how your shields are actually protecting you from getting obliterated. And so
mm,
whatever wounds or whatever thickness or heaviness that still exists is actually serving a purpose. It's not meant to be transcended until the right timing. So everything has divine timing. There's a way to trust in the process and slow your life down so much that you become the observer of your dream. So Toltec say we're dreaming right now. And when we die, we look back on all this and it's all just the most beautiful dream. Even the most difficult moments, you're able to see it as a dream. And so whether it was nightmarish or even horror itself, and a lot of kids are raised in horror. It is a very difficult thing to come to terms with the terror that exists here. So Toltecs say this is a world of beauty and terror, and the beauty balances the terror, and that knowledge is a very powerful thing to engage in, but it's dangerous to become aware. It's almost safer to stay unaware because then at least you won't have the potential of becoming undone or overwhelmed by too
Hmm.
many feelings or
Hmm.
become in contact with something that is, beyond your capacity to perceive. So
Hmm.
the Toltecs say there's the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. And our
Yeah.
ability to move into the unknown will allow us to glimpse the unknowable. And everything is designed to be a mystery. It's not meant to be understood. It's meant to be witnessed. And there's a huge boost of energy that comes when you are able to stop your mind. Toltecs call it stopping the world. Because if you truly stop your mind, this dream illusion goes away.
Yeah.
And there's actually another world on the other side of it. And that's where telepathy and shamans converse. They go into dreams, they meet each other in dreams, they have full-on conversations, and then they link arms, and then they travel into deeper and deeper layers because it feels really good to be supported and connected electrically to other people. And
Mm.
we're not a lone wolf is a dead wolf, so we have to learn how to work with community and learn how to interact with those reflections, and people's wounds are going to surface the more vulnerable and close we get with people, the more uncomfortable this new territory, our heart starts to open more and more. And
Mhm.
that's where we get to know, where our real, even the deeper layers of the wounds exist. So finding a way to fall in love with the earth and the sun and instead of people will allow you to become alone. And then that aloneness turns into all oneness.
Mhm.
And like one of my teachers spent 18 years in solitude, didn't see a single person, right? But he had the tools to do that. Most people would not survive that. They would come out scrambled. So our capacity to really move deep into the mystery and not need to make sense or explain things is where your eyes shift and you start to see energy, and you're not going to relate to people that don't have that experience, but you don't need to because you can
Mhm.
find a way to relate to them. You can always build bridges
Mhm.
and you start to become multidimensional in that respect.
Mhm. I love that.
Mm.
I love that word multidimensional. As you were speaking about like grabbing arms, I had this flash of Harry Potter, when they would like go to different dimensions. It's like there's so much actually in the world around us that's reminding of reminding us of our capacity to be multidimensional. And actually that's the truth of who you are. You're not the little me over there crying and having a hard day, There's so much more to you. And having that willingness to go there is what, we call a miracle.
Mhm.
Your willingness to shift your perception.
Well, that
We'll
word will, there's a way to build your will.
Yeah.
Strengthen your will. It's
Mm.
it's beyond the five senses. The
Mhm.
sixth sense is will, and shamans build their will, and then that allows them to do things physically that they wouldn't have been able to do without that. They don't
Mhm.
show that off. They keep that private. So I experienced running down treacherous terrain in the dark without being able to see what was in front of me, but the darkness held me, and I was completely floating, and I was inside of the most spectacular experience of my life because I surrendered to such a degree. There was no fear because I knew that the darkness was embracing me. And so people talk about, like a lot of what the Toltecs do is learn to sit in dark rooms and observe. There's these colors that'll show up if you can stay silent. Your breath will start to get quicker. You're able to see all these incredible patterns start to present. So
Mhm.
we're inside of this completely beautiful system that is in place to lend us the most beautiful energy in order for us to become beautiful ourselves. But if we're using the mirror to validate whether we're beautiful or not, then there's no way to shatter that mirror. That
Mm,
mirror, we want to go through the mirror
mm,
and become one with all that we're observing that's beyond the mirror. And so this work is, designed to heal us. We're meant to have ecstatic experience, and that's what heals the chakra system. And I don't think people give themselves permission to move into their desire and really admit to what they want to feel. And therefore they pretend that they're content. And
true.
we need to get really raw and real and honest that we're not content and that we want more. It's okay to want more. It's okay to want in on all of it. And that's where the perspective really shifts is when you step into your power and stop doing things you don't want to do.
Mm,
But there are challenges where you'll be called you don't want to do, but your part of you knows you need to do. And
mhm,
so it's just about listening rather than overthinking.
mhm.
Mm.
So good. Wow. The sun just came in on your face.
So it feels good.
Yeah. I wish we had some sun. It's freezing here. It's like 22 degrees.
Yeah, it's 18 degrees here, but Montana's got this big sky sun that mixes with the freezing cold. So it's pretty intense.
Right on.
Extremes, contrast.
Right. Well, I
Mhm.
just want to thank you for doing the work, and doing this practice and sharing, what you can with others and being willing to do that. And because it takes a lot of courage, that's why they call it the hero's journey. It's a real thing. I want to look really quick to see if my friend Kira Kelm is here. Well, if she is, or if she's hearing, I just want to wish her a very happy birthday. She was like, "Hey,
I love kids.
happy birthday." You know Kira, right? You actually met her
So,
in San Diego, right?
uh, I don't know if we met in person or not. Because I never saw her face online, but maybe we did.
Yeah, you did actually. She did. You met her in at Jason Brashear's meetup. She was there.
Yeah, that was a great. I met so many powerful women. Like that area has so many really powerhouses. And a
Mhm.
lot of them showed up, and it was really, really cool to and men as well. But it was for whatever reason, there was just so many really unique women that showed up to that training or to that talk, and that was a powerful weekend to be with Jason and everyone at the Airbnb. And I didn't sleep the whole time. I got so altered from being in the power of that group, and then I got to go and be with them in Virginia again, and yeah, there's just real magic happening in that community.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
Mm.
Kira introduced me to his work, and I can only go as far as I can go at the time that I can, with everything else. But he's real deep, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
hard to explain him to people. Like I don't even know how to explain his work. Um,
Totally. Yeah, there's a lot of people pushing back saying it's too bad. If you hung out with him for a few days, you wouldn't be able to project any nonsense onto him. He's just a little boy inside of a big body and he's just great. Just watching him collect seashells for hours on the beach by himself is like, oh man, what an incredible spirit. So
yeah,
yeah, good to connect. And you really gave me a big start in meeting on Miraculous Mondays. And that's how like Kazri found me and different people started asking for sessions and then they started asking, well, can you do a channel? And I was never gonna do that. So I appreciate you for opening the door for me.
well, thank you. That's good to hear. Yeah, those were interesting times. I'm still processing so much of what occurred, but if only the love is real, then only the relationships like with you and with Kira and a handful of others that have been just such a gift in my life, that we could actually speak this language and understand each other and be there for each other. It's interesting in this weird world that we live in to have people that speak the same language even.
Yeah, yeah, these appointments with knowledge, we're all meant to meet, even the cult leaders that we find ourselves, inside of for periods of time. But those of us that listened were able to walk away from people that were, turning into little monsters. And It's sad, but it's just the way the world operates is we're not meant to, it's not meant to be clean and easy. We're gonna get down and dirty sometimes to
Yeah.
get what's going on.
It's good to know, right? It's like it's all going to plan. Like it's all in divine right order. Relax and breathe, go with the flow, and trust the process, you know.
Beautiful.
So how can people find you? Should I put, I mean, I know that we haven't had a real big audience. I haven't been on YouTube in a long time.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no.
so this is a great start for me, and I appreciate you being the one because you're so like dear to my heart. It used to give me so much, st like I felt so grounded with you in the circle back in those Miraculous Mondays. I was like, I think we had a good rapport going back, and so we'll definitely do this again as the channel builds up. And but
Yeah.
for people to find you, if they want to engage with you, do you want to? I can add it to the.
Yeah, yeah. My website is joelschafer.com and it's SCHAFER. And then my YouTube channel is Perceiver. And then on Instagram, it's just joel.schafer. And yeah, feel free to reach out. I do free consults. The groups that I teach, we do Sundays at noon and Tuesdays at 6 p.m. That's Mountain Time. And we do these really powerful movements together. And the synchronicity of doing these very strange, abstract movements breaks up a lot of energy that most people don't even know is accessible. So there's a huge boost. Or for some people, they get fatigued because they need to rest. So it really surfaces what's needed in your system. And we just have really profound conversations. And the people that have been training in it are healing really powerfully because they're showing up even though there's times of resistance. They're really giving it an opportunity to move their perception. And our perception's meant to move. It's not
Mhm.
meant to stay in the same place all the time.
Mhm.
That's what makes us remember. Our genetic memory is kind of like hard to access, but there's a way to not only remember every memory of this lifetime, but able to have memories to all the parallel lives that are co-occurring right now with you. And then you start to become otherworldly and you start to speak from a place that's really different than kind of the typical unveiling. So yeah, lots of magic in those courses if people feel called to join. You can join at any time. You just get like we've only done one class this round, so you just get the recording of the first class and you can enter in and begin whenever. So, but thank you so much, Marie. It's so good to
Sounds.
be with you again.
Thank you. Good to be with you too. I'm glad that you're sharing all these practices with people because I do know that, now is the time to embrace your weirdness, embrace your dimensionality or whatever we say is that's definitely a Kira term. And also just like these ideas of cosmic conversations being so healing. You use the word healing, and I really feel like that's when we heal, we're not healed alone. And it's not that we have this intention to heal the world or like blah, 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 but hey, there's actually a lot of joy here too. We've talked a little bit about how intense it is, but
Yeah.
actually the peace that you have by accepting your weirdness and the fact that you are intense and that time is intense and life is hard and all of those things, when we start to embrace that journey, things get actually a lot easier, even though it might seem like they're more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, the challenges increase, but you become a warrior in the process. And so you walk toward the challenge rather than resist it. And it feels so much better.
Yeah.
Quite simple, but it complex at first. We have to come out of the complexity, and that takes patience and trust.
Yeah. All the
Yeah.
good stuff. So thank you. If you guys are watching, I just also want to invite you next week. I'm doing a little webinar masterclass on Thursday at 12, and I'll put all of that stuff in here. And you're obviously welcome to come as well. I love to, I call it yoga off the mat.
Awesome.
How do we apply these principles that we're learning in yoga off your yoga mat and in your life when it kind of matters?
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're continuing to offer your powerful shares and teachings with the world, Marie, and all that you've been through. I'm really honored that you're, yeah, uh, able to stand in the light and step forward into your power. And it takes courage to have people witness you and project their stuff. So, it's this is how we do it is step into
This
the
is
light.
how we do it. Remember that song?
Oh,
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for acknowledging me. It's so good to be with you. I know we'll be in touch more often now that I'm taking up my
Yeah,
sword and going out to beat the bad guys.
have fun with it.
Thank you, Jill. I love you so much.
You too. All right.
Bye.